Eugene Lindley. Eugene had a very unusual profession during the Second World War in the United States Navy. He was an airship radio man. And we'll get to the specifics of airships in just a moment. Gene, first of all, now you went through basic training in Norfolk. Let's talk about the evolution now of where you went from boot camp and how you ultimately end up as an airship radio man.
Now, at boot camp there, they give you all kind of training, and they would check you out in several different things. And of course, I must have been good at that, or they wouldn't have sent me to Auburn Polytechnical Institute in Alabama. That's where we had our radio school. That's the first place I went after boots. After the radio school, after our graduation, then they sent us to Lakehurst, New Jersey. It wasn't any of these lighter than air bases opened up yet.
Now, why to Lakehurst?
Lakehurst is where all your lighter than air training happens. There, we went through our schools on lighter than air, what kept them up and what made things run. And, of course, I'd already had my radio school down in Alabama, so I didn't need that. But we would even take the blimps out from Lakehurst on training flights. And then after I finished my training there at Lakehurst, then I was sent to the squadron at South Weymouth, Massachusetts. And of course we took convoys out of Boston Harbor then.
Now what was the purpose? What was the need for airships?
The need for airships was we didn't have any way of knowing where the German subs were out there. The coast was just running with a full German wolf pack up and down the East Coast, and they were sinking our ships as fast as we could build them. So something had to be done. They got this idea from the British. The British around their harbors had these big balloons that were tethered to with a rope. They could have a camera up there to take a picture. Well, this here is giving them a picture out in front of a convoy for hundreds of miles all around. Anything that looked different, we had to go and check on it. The Germans would come up and they would stick an orange crate over top of the periscope and look through them cracks. And some of the ships wouldn't think there's anything there.
What success rate did you have during the Second World War?
There was only one ship sunk that was protected by our blimps. And we had 70,000 ships that we took out on the East Coast and 30,000 on the West Coast. That's the reason that we were up there to put a stop to German subs. And there's an article in the paper right there that we were reading there that the German admiral, he said that those blimps were the things that kept them from going and just really destroying our ships. We could drop some depth charges, and several times we did drop the depth charges, but I just seen the bottom of the ocean come up. I didn't see no ships or anything like that.
How did you detect enemy submarines?
Well, I'm going to explain that to you right now. It's what I call magnetic arrow detection. Magnetic arrow detection regulates the Earth's magnetic field on a chart in the blimp. And as that chart is going over land, it just moves like this. There's this little hand there with it's got ink on it. When we hit the ocean, then it clears up unless there's metal under there. So when we get out at sea, when we run across anything that's metal under there, it would show up and a hand would sweep over on that chart.
Right.
At that same time, it would drop a flare, and then we were trained to go into a clover leaf over that flare. And as we go over it, we run over that same thing again, and we drop another one. And so we could tell where the German sub was and how fast he was going, even though he couldn't get up and see us. So we have on board, out under the front, magnetic arrow detection. And of course, like I said, when we got several of those flares, we knew that there was something moving under there. And then we could call in heavy than air. We had 9 crew members. We have a pilot, co-pilot, navigator, 2 radio men.
Why 2?
You got to have one in case one of them gets killed, I guess. But we got to be watching 2 different things. The radar, I was on the radar and he was on the radio. We had to notify the base every hour where we were, and we in turn would get Weather Bureau, would get the weather.
Okay, so you said
there
2
had
radio
2 of them, and every hour we would just switch around.
And then who else was part of the ship's complement?
All right, we had 2 aircraft mechanics, They worked on the engines. We had two 500 horsepower Pratt & Whitney engines. These were radial engines.
Right.
And they kept them things running while we was up in the air. And then, of course, we had two boatswain's mates. We called them riggers. They had a little kitchen in there, of course, we have to stay over lunch. And they would make up the dinner. And I'll tell you, we had some of the best meals. I thought it was just great because I was just a country boy. I didn't know nothing about all that good stuff anyway. But by the way, let me tell you, as we take off, there's a little switch up there. It's called identification, friend or foe.
IFF for short.
Yeah. If you don't flip that switch, there's going to be a fighter plane up next to you there. So one morning, we didn't flip it. But we learned not to do that anymore.
When you get down to Houma, Louisiana, which is where you served much of your time on airships.
That's exactly right.
That would, of course, been protecting convoys coming out of the Mississippi River.
And New Orleans.
Lighter-than-air airship. Down there in Louisiana and the Gulf of Mexico, they'll get some pretty ferocious storms from time to time. How much of a hazard or a problem was that for you?
At times, it was a real hazard because sometimes we could go around a storm at sea. But when it was hitting at the base out there, sometimes we'd have a hurricane there, and then we'd move our airship to Hitchcock, Texas this way, or Richmond, Florida. A lot of times we'd have a training flight and a familiarization flight. And we'd go up around Baton Rouge and look at all the buildings in case we'd ever come in and it was foggy and we couldn't get the radio. Well, we'd know where we were. 9 crew members, and usually there's the captain of the base will get his flight pay in. See, now us sailors were doing flight pay and sea pay.
So you had the best of both worlds.
And I was just a seaman second class in there. And one day at inspection, the captain looked at me and said, what do you do on there? And I said, well, I'm a radio operator. He said, make that guy first class. Right there, just like that. I was just 20 years old.